Hey you guys, welcome to the Main Springer channel. I'm Parikh, and in today's video this is Q&A time. So this is basically an accumulation of all the questions that you all have asked over this past several weeks. So let's get right into it. The first question we have is from T94. Why did you sell your Furlan-Mari black sector dial? Furlan-Mari, for those who are not familiar, is a micro brand that does vintage design inspired modern watches. And the aesthetics are mostly vintage, the parts inside the watch, the case design are mostly modern. And the sector dial was a limited edition that they launched in the black color, and I kind of jumped on it. I was very interested in that watch. But when I actually got the watch, what I realized was the hands and the indices were mostly black polished, which is really a great thing in terms of finishing. But when it actually catches light, it turns black. And when you overlay the black indices over a black dial, it kind of tends to vanish in the background and actually makes time telling just a bit harder. And for that reason, it started to get a little bit annoying for me to tell the time on that particular watch. And that was the reason that I got rid of it. Now, in hindsight, I probably would have gotten a Furlan-Mari with a different dial color, but since I sold that watch, there has been an explosion of options of micro brand watches that are available, and for that reason I never really went back to that watch. But there are several other micro brand watches that are on my list that I do consider probably adding to my collection someday. But great question, thank you for that. The next question is from Will Agent 9. Why don't you have any complications in your collection? I'm going to answer this in two parts. The first thing is I do have some complications in my collection. My Tudor Advisor is essentially a complication. It is a mechanical alarm watch, which is very unique for this day and age. But I used to have a few chronographs in my collection, which probably came and went before my YouTube channel actually started growing. And I used to have a Tudor Heritage Chrono Blue, which is a gorgeous looking chronograph. I love the colorway of that particular watch, but at 42 millimeters and almost 15 millimeters thick, it was a bit too large for my wrist. Now, I do like the historical proportions of the Tudor Monte Carlo, which was more along a 40 millimeter diameter and about a 12.5, 13 millimeter thickness. So it is a little bit more variable, and I really hope Tudor brings that watch back into their collection. But apart from that, I have also had a vintage Heuer chronograph as well as a Gallet chronograph. So there have been chronographs that have come and gone in my collection, just none that currently exist. Hopefully there will be a chronograph that I will add to the collection. One watch that I did have my eyes on was the Tudor Pelagos chronograph, the Alinghi Racing Edition. I tried that watch out when I was on travel. It was a carbon fiber dial, which is super lightweight, and because it's dark in color and black, it kind of vanishes on your wrist. And even though it's 43 millimeters, which is way larger than anything I would normally wear, it kind of disappears on your wrist. And because of the lightweightness and the color scheme that it had, it felt a lot more wearable than probably most other watches. So that may be something that I add to my collection in a future date. But great question, and thanks again for asking that particular question. So this question is from Fur832. See, you made a lot of G-Shock videos in the past. Any recommendations for a fun, colorful version? Well, thank you first of all for really digging into the archives and seeing some of my old videos on G-Shocks. It so happened that I actually started off as a G-Shock collector and then made my way to mechanical watches, and that's kind of my watch collecting history. But when I was collecting G-Shocks, there were just a variety of G-Shocks, and it was kind of a hype season for G-Shocks at that time, so prices were really skyrocketing on some of those, but they kind of have mellowed down. So if you're looking for a recommendation for a fun, colorful G-Shock, I would probably suggest the Dee&Ricky versions of the G-Shock. They're mostly in black or white polymer cases, but they kind of have the Lego colors of blue, yellow, and red that kind of disperse the dial, and it's kind of a beautiful looking watch. The other one is from a Hawaiian-based, I think, surfing company called Information. It's spelled IN, the number 4, Mation, and some of their watches are just vibrant vibrant, beautiful colors. I would highly recommend some of those watches for a collection. And my personal favorite is a brand called Maharishi, who did collaborations with G-Shock. So if you just search G-Shock Maharishi, those would come up. They're not necessarily very colorful, but they are very military inspired in their designs. So the colors and the choices are historical military design based. So if that's something of interest to you, I would highly recommend that. One comment I will also add is if you are planning to dress in streetwear, I think the G-Shocks are fantastic watches to wear. But if you're going anywhere from semi-formal to formal, I think I would stick with a white or a black resin G-Shock or a metal G-Shock. But the colorful versions don't necessarily fly under such dressing conditions. At least that's my personal take on the G-Shock. But good luck finding one that suits your taste, and thanks for asking your question. Going on to the next question, it is from RSS899. What is the most underrated brand among current mainstream brands? I don't think there's a singular answer for this. There are multiple brands that are kind of underrated. I would say the Frederic Constant is a very underrated brand. They provide some amazing high-end complications at a very affordable price. It's funny that people line up for these complications when Patek makes it, but when Frederic Constant makes it, I don't know if it's an awareness thing or there is something about them being a budget brand that people don't place as much faith in them when they launch such amazing complications. To me, probably one of the more higher end underrated brands is going to be Hublot. I think when Hublot first launched, there was just so much splash and shock and pizzazz to their brand, but it wasn't necessarily backed up by the horological chops back in the day, and that kind of reputation has stuck with them, although the brand has made incredible strides in moving up high horology, and the watches they're making are very high tier, are fantastic. The recent collaboration with Djokovic was fantastic. It's like a tourbillon, very tennis inspired design themes infused into the watch, but somehow the reputation of the brand has not kept up with the up movement in their horological chops. So I would highly recommend Hublot as one of the most underrated brands, and I feel that you probably have like a 3 or 4 year window before that goes away and they become a hype brand very soon. So definitely underrated as it stands today. But thank you for your question. The question is from Ambika1640. What watches are in your wish list? There isn't one watch on my wish list, and I would guess that if you ask the same question a month from now, it's going to be a slightly different wish list. But I do have a Speedmaster on my list. I have a Reverso. I do have potentially a Longa watch on there, and there are a few micro brands on the list. The way I collect watches has changed a little bit. Back in the day, it used to be I needed a chronograph, I needed a GMT, and so on. Then became I needed a watch from this specific brand, and now it has become I need a specific version of a specific style of watches from each specific brand. So it's definitely gotten more nuanced, and it definitely changes over time. But those are the general categories. I do have a Speedmaster, Reverso, something from Longa potentially. I'm not going to disclose everything that I want. Breguet is definitely on the wrist. I can be very specific. Breguet 5907, I love that watch. Breguet 7027, that's a great watch. Those are all watches that are potentially on my wish list. If it's on my wish list, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to buy it, but I do really admire those watches, and if I can get one at a great price, I will go for it. Next question is from Gryffindor97. Is there a timepiece you regret selling? There isn't, I guess, one specific timepiece that I regret selling. I have sold Omegas in the past, Grand Seikos in the past, even Rolexes in the past, and honestly, I do not regret selling any one of those watches. I would argue that there was a Tudor vintage piece that I did sell. The vintage pieces are kind of one of a kind, and there was something very unique about that particular vintage watch. Its time period, its reference, its relationship to the British North Greenland expedition. I had listed all of my vintage Tudors for sale through a vintage watch dealer, and at the last minute I kind of changed my mind. I pulled everything from the inventory, but this particular watch already ended up selling, so there was nothing I could do about it. about it. Now, in hindsight, I probably did regret having even listed those watches, because trying to find a vintage piece, again, from the same year, same reference, range, is going to be very hard. So, lesson learned, don't rush into such decisions, and that was probably my one regret as far as a watch that I sold. Thank you for your question. The last question is from Random Jones 6. If you had to get another Rolex watch, what would it be? The Rolex reference watch I probably intend on getting there are two watches. They're both Yachtmasters. The first one is the Yachtmaster Titanium, which is kind of ungettable. So although it's on my wish list, it's kind of like a soft thing because I don't know if I'll ever get one. But I own a Tudor Pelagos. You all know it. I made a video about selling it and buying it again. I'll link that in the description. But I love that watch so much that I sold it once. I regretted it. I bought it again. And I think that Rolex Yachtmaster is essentially the Rolex successor to that Tudor experiment. Tudor always is the company that experiments with an idea, whether it's titanium, whether it's carbon fiber, and so on. And eventually those ideas make it to Rolex. And this is one of those instances where in 2012, Tudor launched the Tudor Pelagos, which was in titanium, the first titanium watch out of Tudor or Rolex. And almost 10 years later, 2023, the Rolex Titanium Yachtmaster comes out. So to me, that is essentially the spiritual successor of the Tudor experiment. For that reason, I want to get that. The other watch is actually a Yachtmaster, but this time it is the white gold version with the rubber bracelet. Now, my whole interest in acquiring this watch is around the rubber bracelet, and I'll tell you why. For those of you who don't know, I am a material scientist by day, and I specialize in a very specific alloy called nitinol. It's a nickel titanium alloy, and that alloy is used in medical devices to make implantable medical devices like stents. And the reason why they use that alloy is, unlike stainless steel, if you take stainless steel and you were to pull it in tension, you probably apply about 0.2% strain to the material before it plastically yields. The unique thing about nitinol is it actually goes through a unique phase transformation, so you can actually put almost 10% strain into the material and still fully recover its shape, which is fascinating, right? 0.2% for stainless steel, 10% for nitinol. And that is why I think Rolex chose that particular material for the rubber bands that they have. And that's why they insist on calling them bracelets, because the metal inside helps the rubber keep its shape, and you can bend it, squish it, and it'll just pop back to its shape because of that. So it's probably the most nerdiest reason in order to acquire the Yachtmaster. And why the Yachtmaster? You may say, why not the Daytona? Well, I'm not very fascinated with the Daytona. I do not like that particular watch. I've tried many Daytonas on my wrist. I do not like the configuration of that. The only other one that comes with this Oyster Flex bracelet is the Yachtmaster in white gold, very discreet, very subtle. That's the reason why I chose the white gold Yachtmaster, potentially. Again, a wish list item. Don't know if it'll ever make it real. It's a bit expensive, so we'll see. But thank you so much for your question, and thank you all for all of your questions. Again, if you have any questions about the videos that I make on watches, any other watch questions you might have, please leave a comment in the comments below, and I am happy to add them in my next Q&A session for this video. If you are new to this channel, please consider liking and subscribing. It really does help grow the channel. And with that, thanks a lot and have a wonderful day. Take care.